Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math.
I'm Sean Gannon, and this is Minute Math. And today we're going to learn about multiplying radical expressions. And what we want to do here is simplify this problem. We have 3 times the square root of 12 times the square root of 6. Well, one of the joys of having square roots here, at least when we're trying to simplify, is that we can combine, if we have the square root of 12 times the square root of 6, we can combine those together under one square root. So we have 3 times the square root of, and 12 times 6. Now what I'm going to do here is I do want to break this down, do prime factorization on this. Well, you can multiply 12 times 6 and then break that down, but 12 times 6 is already kind of broken down some, so let's go break down each one. All right. 6 is 2 times 3, and 12 is 4 times 3, and then 4 is 2 times 2. So 12 times 6, whatever that number came out to be, is the same thing as 2 times 2 times 3 times 2 times 3. So now we can circle a pair. So we have a pair of 2's here, and a pair of 3's here, okay? Pair of 3's. So if we simplify that, we can pull out a pair of 2's and a pair of 3's on the outside. So there's a 3 that's already out there. Then we have another 2 and then a 3 right there. Then what's left on the inside is just a 2. Okay, that one lone 2 that's just sitting there. So now we can simplify here. 3 times 2 times 3. Well, 3 times 2 is 6 times 3 is 18. So we have 18 here times the square root of 2. And that is our final answer. The square root of 5 times the square root of 10. Well, what we can do here is I can combine these, since it's being multiplying here, our rules of multiplying square roots, I can combine them under one square root, so 5 times 10. Well, what I want to do now is see if I can break this down, do some prime factorization here. Well, 10 is 5 times 2. So in reality, whatever 5 times 10 is the same thing as 5 times 5 times 2. So now I want to circle my pairs. I have a pair of 5's right here, a pair of 5's right there. A pair of 5's, bring a single 5 to the outside, right? We're left with 2 just left over on the inside, right there. And there we have it. We have our final answer here of a 5 times the square root of 2. Square root of 6 times the square root of 6. Okay? Well, this one's actually fairly simple. So we have square root of 6 times square root of 6. We can combine that to be in one square root. 6 times 6 right there. And normally we're looking for our pairs, right? We're breaking them down, find our pairs. But I already have a pair here, okay? I have a pair of 6, so 6 times 6, which we know is 36. Square root of 36 is back to be 6. Well, this pair, I see a pair here. Pair of 6's, right? Those pair of 6's we just can put on the outside. Pair of 6's on the outside of the square root. And then there's nothing left inside the square root. And so we don't put anything, we leave it. There's nothing there. And so we're done. That's it. That's just 6. Square root of 5 times negative 4 times the square root of 20. Well, since this is all multiplication, let's all bring it together. Okay, the square roots we can put inside, just have one big square root, and the negative 4 out front. So we have a negative 4 here times the square root of 20 times 5. So now let's go break this down. Let's go break down the 20. Well, 20 is just 4 times 5, and 4 is 2 times 2. So really, whatever 20 times 5 is can break down to be 2 times 2 times 5 times 5. Well, let's go circle our pairs. We have a pair of 2's right here, and we have a pair of 5's. So a pair of 2's and a pair of 5's. We bring it to the outside square root. So we have negative 4 times the pair of 2's times the pair of 5's. Okay, represented by a single outside the square root. There's nothing left inside the square root, so we don't have to write the square root anymore. We're done. It kind of disappears there. Okay? So now we have, well, 2 times 5 is 10, times negative 4 is negative 40, and so our final answer here is just a negative 40, and that's what this simplified to be. Negative 4 times the square root of 15 times the negative square root of 3. Well, what we want to do here is that we can combine our square roots under one roof, really, one square root with the multiplication there. and the negative will go out front with the -4, which will cancel out, right? So a negative and a negative become a positive, so we have a positive 4 on the outside. Then inside, we have the 15, square root of 15 times the square root of 3, and we can write it like that, multiplying inside the square root. Well, we can break down 15 to be 5 times 3, okay? And so now we have 15 times 3 is the same thing as 5 times 3 times 3. We now want to circle our pairs. I have a pair of 3's right there. They are a single on the outside, so we have 4 times 3 on the outside. Square root of 5 is left on the inside, or 5 is left inside the square root. 4 times 3 is 12, so we have 12 here times the square root of 5, and that is our final answer. The square root of 20 x squared times the square root of 20x. Okay. Well, we can combine this under one big square root, which I'm going to do. I'm going to rearrange putting my like terms next to each other, or like my numbers next to each other, my x's next to each other. So the square root here of 20 times 20 times x squared times x. Okay. Well, I could break down 20 times 20, but right there, I know my goal is seeing pairs. I have a pair of 20s right there, right? So I'm going to circle that pair and kind of be done with that. X squared breaks down to be x times x. There's a pair, and that one x is just by itself. So each pair represents a single on the outside. There's 20 on the outside. There's an x on the outside. Left with just this one x on the inside, square root of x, and there we go. Our final answer here is just 20x times the square root of x. Square root of 15n squared times the square root of 10n to the third. All right. Well, we can combine this under one big square root, so that's what I'm actually going to do. I have the square root here of 15 times, and I'm going to put 10 here, 15 and 10 next to each other, then times the n squared times the n to the third. So now we want to break each part down, all right? So 15 is 3 times 5, 10 is 5 times 2, n squared is n times n, and n to the third is n, right? So now we have all this broken down here, okay? Let's go find our pairs. Well, we have a pair of 5's right there, we have a pair of n's right there, and another pair of n's right there. So each pair we can write on the outside of the single, so the 5's is a single 5 on the outside, the n's is a single n on the outside, and another n singled on the outside. On the inside, we're left with 3 times 2. The singles, the 3, the 2's, and then that one n that's right there. So now all that's left to do is to simplify. N times n squared, so we have 5 times n squared, times the square root of 3 times 2 is 6, 6n. And there we go. Our final answer is just 5n squared times the square root of 6n. Square root of 18a squared times 4 square root of 3a squared. Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to combine this to be one big square root. The 4 still comes out front, so we have 4 here. The square root here, since this will be multiplied, we can do that. We have 18 times a 3. I'm going to put the numbers together, times a squared times a squared. Okay? Well, let's go break some things down. 18 is the same thing as 3 times 6. So it's 6 times 3 here. And 6 is 2 times 3. All right. So now what we can do is we circle our pairs. Now normally I'd break down the a squareds, and you can if you really want to. But I'm going to do something a little different this time. So we circle our pairs. I have a pair of 3's right here. And that's it. And I have a pair of a squareds right there. A pair of a squareds. So we bring our pairs and put them on the outside. We have 4. Let's just say there times the 3, that pair, times my pair of a squareds. What's left then is just the singles, the 2 times the 3 inside the square root, 2 times 3. So now when I simplify this, 4 times 3 becomes a 12. A squared is just right there. Then 2 times 3 is 6. And so my final answer is just 12 times a squared times the square root of 6. Negative 3 times the square root of 7 r to the third power times 6 times the square root of 7 times r to the second power. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm bringing the 6 out front, and 6 times the minus 3 is minus 18. Okay, so minus 18 up front. Then I'm going to have the square root all be 1 square root. We have 7 here times 7, right? Times r to the third power times r squared. So I kind of rearranged it, but put all underneath one big square root. So now what I'm going to do is kind of break this down. Well, 7s I can't break down, but the r's I can. I can break them down to be r, and r squared to be r times r. So with circular pairs, we have one pair of r's, two pairs of r's, and this one r is just by itself. I also have a pair of 7s. So we can simplify this by putting all of our pairs as singles on the outside. So we have negative 18 times a 7 right there, times an r times the second r, times, well, just the square root what's left now, just that single r by itself. Okay? So now we have to simplify this. I don't know 18 times 7 on top of my head here. So 18 times 7, let's just calculate really quickly, is 126. So we have a negative 126 here, times r is r squared. And we have the square root of r inside, and here we go. Our final answer here is just negative 126 r squared times the square root of r. Negative 4 times the square root of 28x times the square root of 7x to the third. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to put this all under one big square root right there. Those two parts I can combine it together. So we have negative 4 times the square root. I'm going to put my numbers together. 28 times 7, and then that x comes down here. Excuse me, and that x to the third right there. So now let's go break this down. 28 is 4 times 7, and 4 is 2 times 2. And then the x's, we have one x there, and then 3 x's right here. X, x, x. So now let's go circle our pairs. I have a pair of 2's right there. I have a pair of 7's right there. I have, we can do it like this, a pair of x's right there, and another pair of x's. So everything has a pair inside the square root, which is great. So when we simplify this, we have negative 4 on the outside, times a pair of 2's, times a 7, times an x times the last x. Okay, and there's nothing else left inside the square root, so we don't need it anymore. It kind of disappears, it's gone. Okay, so now we have to simplify this. Negative 4 times 2 is a negative 8, and negative 8 times 7 is a negative 56. X times x is x squared. So that's it. That's our final answer, negative 56 times x squared. Square root of 3 times 5 plus the square root of 3. Okay. Well, right now I'm looking inside this group. Can I simplify that? No, I can't simplify 5 plus square root of 3. So I'm going to distribute the square root of 3 across. So square root of 3 times 5 is 5 times the square root of 3 plus square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Well, we can combine that, right, to be one big square root, and that's square root of 3 times 3. Okay? Well, if we look at it, that a few ways you can simplify it. 3 times 3 is 9, so we have 5 times the square root of 3. That's a weird looking 3. That's a 3. Plus the square root of 9, right? 3 times 3 being 9. Square root of 9 is just 3, so we have 5 square root of 3 plus 3, and that's it. There's our final answer. We can't simplify this anymore. Now, some people will want to put the 3 out front, or square root of 5, or 5 square root of 3 is already out front. Really doesn't matter. Our final answer here is just 5 times square root of 3 plus 3. 2 times the square root of 5 times, in parentheses, square root of 6 plus 2. Well, I'm looking inside this parenthesis right here. Can I simplify anything? Not really. Square root of 6 is in the simplest form, and I can't combine it with the 2. Okay? So now I have to distribute the 2 square root of 5 to both parts. Okay? So 2 times square root of 5 times square root of 6 is just 2 times, and we combine it in 1 square root of 5 times 6. Okay? Then we multiply the 2 square root of 5 times the 2, plus there. 2 times 2 is a 4, and then we're left with just the square root of 5. So now I have to simplify. Can I break this down? Well, 6 is just 2 times 3, right? So if 6 has 2 times 3, 5 can't break down, I have no pairs. So actually, there's no way I can break this down to bring anything out. So I think about, okay, 5 times 6 is 30, so I just have to multiply those together, and then that's it. I can't simplify anymore. So we have 2 times the square root of 30 here, okay, plus 4 times the square root of 5. And so that is just our final answer here of 2 square root of 30 plus 4 times the square root of 5. Negative 3 times the square root of 3 times 2 plus the square root of 6. Okay? Well, what I want to do is first look in the square root. Can I simplify anything in the square root? Or in the parentheses, sorry? No, can't bring in anything combined there. So I'm going to distribute now this square root of 3 times, negative 3 times the square root of 3 to both parts. So negative 3 times 2 is a negative 6, square root of 3 right there, right? Then we do it again, plus the negative 3 stays on the outside, and underneath the square root we just have the 3 times the 6, okay? So now let's see if we can break this down. Well, 6 can break down to be 3 times 2, and I see a pair of 3's right there, right? So once we simplify it, negative 6 times square root of 3, I can't break that down anymore, so we have negative 6 square root of 3 here, plus negative 3 on the outside, times these pair of 3's come together, right? A pair, single on the outside, 3, and we're left with just the square root of 2 on the inside. We're the only single left. So you can simplify this. We have negative 6 square root of 3 just right there, plus, well, negative 3 times 3 is a negative 9, and so since it's a negative 9, we're just making a minus here. So we have minus a 9 times the square root of 2 is left over, and that's it. Our final answer here is this negative 6 times the square root of 3 minus 9 times the square root of 2. Square root of 3 times a negative 5 times the square root of 10 plus the square root of 6. Okay? Well, what I want to do here is first, can I simplify anything within this parenthesis? Not really, not really. So what I want to do now is distribute the square root of 3 across. Square root of 3 to both parts. Well, the negative 5 stays on the outside, and the square root of 10, we can write that to be 10 times 3 and sign one parenthesis. I do the same thing, bring the square root of 3 across here, and so I have the square root of 6 times 3 right there. Okay, so now I'm trying to simplify this. Well, 10 comes out to be 2 times 5, so I simplify that, we have 2 times 5, but I don't see any pairs inside the square root, so sometimes we break this down, we don't see any pairs that we can circle, so when I simplify this, I have negative 5 times the square root of, well, I just do 10 times 3, or 2 times 5 times 3, which is 30. Okay, then we have plus sign here. 6 breaks down to be a 2 times 3, okay? Well, I do have a pair of 3's now, right there, right? Pair of 3's, so I'm going to put a single 3 on the outside, and the 2's just left over inside the square root, and there we go. And that's actually it. Since I can't simplify this anymore, this is my final answer here. Negative 5 times the square root of 30 plus 3 times the square root of 2. Negative 2 times the square root of 15 times the negative 3 square root of 3 plus 3 times the square root of 5. Okay? Well, what I want to do here is I need to distribute this square root of 15 to both parts. Okay, so I'm going to distribute, or the negative 2 square root of 15. So I'm going to multiply this out. Okay, the negative 2 times the negative 3 becomes a positive 6. Okay, the square root of 15 times the square root of 3, that can be put into one big square root, and I'm just going to put as 15 times 3. Then we're going to do the same thing here, distribute the negative 2 times the square root of 15 times 3 square root of 5. Negative 2 times 3 is a negative 6. And the square root of 15 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 15 times 5. And combine them together inside the square root. So now let's go break this down. 15 turns out to be a 5 times a 3, and 3 times a 5. We circle our pairs. Here we have a pair of 3's, and here we have a pair of 5's. So we know when we simplify this, we can take a pair, put the individual on the outside, so we have 3 times 6 times the lone ranger by himself, square root of 5, minus, let's go minus this time, instead of plusing a negative or adding a negative. Bring the 5 out, we have 5 times the 6 now, out of the square root of 3, which is left over. Okay, well now, 3 times 6 is 18, so we have 18 square root of 5, minus 5 times 6 is 30, 30 square root of 3, and there we have it. Our final answer is 18 square root of 5 minus 30 square root of 3. 5 times the square root of 42x times 4 plus 4 square root of 7x. Okay? Well, what we want to do here is we're going to distribute the 5 times the 42 square root of 42x to both parts. So 5 times 5 times 4 is 20, and then the square root of 42x just stays right there, plus, again, distribute to the next part, 5 times 4 is that 20, and then we have in the inside, let's go per similar terms, the numbers together, 42 times 7 times x. I move that x and that x, okay? So now, let's go see if we can break things down a little bit. Well, 42 is 7 times 6, right? So it's 7 times 6, and then 6 is 2 times 3. But I don't see any pairs, so it's not going to simplify that one. But here, if I multiply it as 7 and 6, right? So 6 and 7 like this, and 2 and 3, okay? What I can see here is I see a pair of 7s. And for that matter, I also see a pair of x's, okay? So when we simplify this, the left one here just becomes 20 square root of 42x. Just stays like that because we can't really circle any pairs, so we're going to keep it as a 42 square root of 42x. But this one here, plus 20, we're going to bring out one of the 7s and bring out one of the x's, okay? And the inside the square root, we're left with 2 times the 3, the 2 Lone Rangers right there. So we simplify here. Well, this one again cannot simplify anymore. 20 times the square root of 42x. But this one here, 20 times 7 is 140. 140x times the square root of 2 times 3, which is 6. And there we go. Final answer here is just 20 square root of 42x plus 140x square root of 6. Square root of 14x times 3 minus the square root of 2x. Okay? Well, if I want to distribute this, right, I'm going to distribute the square root of 14x to both parts. All right, so square root of 14x times 3. 3 is just on the outside, so it's 3 square root of 14x right there. Then we distribute the 14x to the next one, the square root of 2x. So the minus sign comes down. So we can combine them all together under one big square root. 14 times the 2 times the x times the x. Okay. So now let's see if we can break some things down here. 14 is 7 times 2. And we can do 7 times 2 here. Okay. On this one, well, this 14, 7 being 7 times 2, there's no pair, so when we simplify it, there's nothing really we can do. So we have 3 square root of 14, just x right there. But this one, I see we have a pair of 2's. And we have a pair of x's as well. So again, each pair represents an individual on the outside. So we have 2 times x there, times the square root of what's left, which is just 7. Okay? So let me just rewrite this now without the multiplication there, but we're pretty much done here. 3 square root of 14x minus 2x square root of 7. And that is the final answer. Square root of 6n times 7n to the third plus square root of 12. All right. Well, inside this parenthesis, there's nothing that I can do to simplify. So let's distribute the square root of 6n to both parts. Well, square root of 6n times 7n to the third really can't combine anything under the square root. So we have 7n to the third times the square root of 6n. That's it. Plus, we distribute now the 6n to the square root of 12, and this one we can combine under one big square root. That's 12 times 6n. Okay. Well, luckily, 6n really doesn't break down to be anything. I mean, it's 2 times 3, right? We can't find any pairs, and so the square root of 6n just stays there. So this one just keeps coming down for the rest of the problem here. So we have 7n to the third times the square root of 6n. But this 12, right, can break down to be 2 times 6. And watch this. I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to keep breaking down 6 to be another 2 times 3. I see a pair right here, a pair of 6's, right? So then let's say a pair of 6's. I'm going to take that pair right now instead of breaking down this even more. Okay? Bringing that out, the pair of 6's outside with 6 here. Left the Lone Rangers by himself is the 2 and the n. Okay? So now let's go rewrite this a little nicer here. Okay? That 2 and that n. So it's 7n to the third times the square root of 6n plus 6 times the square root of 2n. Okay? Square root of 3v times the square root of 6 plus the square root of 10. Well, I cannot simplify anything inside the square on the parenthesis there. So I'm going to distribute now this, because multiplication there, the square root of 3v to both parts. So the square root of 3v times square root of 6 can be under one big parenthesis, or one big square root. 3 times 6 times v. I'm going to put my numbers together in my variable. Same thing with my 10 here. Okay? Square root of 10 by 3 times 10 times v. Putting it all together in one big square root. So now we have to see what we can simplify. Well, 6 is 3 times 2. Great. And 10 is 5 times 2. Okay. Well, here I can see a pair of 3's going on right there. That's great. And nothing else. So if I simplify that, the 3 comes on the outside, just 1 3 times 2v right there, right? 2 and the v. Plus here, well, do I see a pair of anything? No, there's no pairs. So I'm going to go back to 3 times 10, which is 30. I'm going to square root of 30 here, and then v, and then that's it. That's our final answer. 3 times the square root of 2v plus square root of 30v. Square root of 21r times 5 plus the square root of 7. Okay? Well, I need to distribute that square root of 21r to both sides. So let's go distribute that here. Square root of 21r times 5 is just 5 times the square root of 21r. Pretty simple. The next one here, though, distribute the 21r, square root of 21r times the square root of 7. Put it under one big square root. 21 times 7 times r. Right there. Okay? Well, let's see what we can break down. 21 is, that's 3 times 7. And that's it. And so here we have 3 times 7 as well. There is no pairs, so I can pair up here. 3, 7 r, nothing I can pair up, so we just have 5 square root. Keep it as a 21r. But this one here, I see a pair of 7s. So since I see a pair of 7s, I'm going to put an individual 7 on the outside of the square root. And the square root of, just the 3 comes out because it's single, and the r comes out as single. And that's it. Our final answer here is 5 square root of 21r plus 7 to the square root of 3r. Negative 2 square root of 3 plus 2 times the square root of 3 minus 5. Okay? So you might have heard of what we call FOIL, but I just say all parts of my first parenthesis be multiplied by all parts of my second parenthesis. So let's go do that. Negative 2 times the square root of 3 comes out to be a negative 2 square root of 3 times 3. Again, negative square root of negative 2 square root of 3 times 5 is just a positive, both negative. 2 times 5 is 10, 10 square root of 3. Angle this down a little, maybe my arc a little too deep there. So now let's work with the 2's. 2 times the square root of 3 is just 2 square root of 3. And 2 times minus 5 is a minus 10. So just like you would before, we just kind of multiply all parts here. Make sure you draw your arcs, make sure everything comes down. And now we just have to simplify this, okay? Well, the square root of 3 times 3, I see my pair, okay? I already see a pair of 3's right there. I can bring that to the outside and have negative 2 times 3 here, okay? Now, I have square root of 3 and square root of 3. I can combine these two, okay? I can combine those two to be one part here. So we look to the number out in front, the 10 and 2. So this becomes 12 square root of 3, and then we have a minus 10 right there. Negative 2 times 3 is a negative 6, plus 12 square root of 3 minus 10. Well, now let's go and look. We have negative 6 and minus 10 here, okay? Negative 6 and minus 10 come out to be a negative 16 plus 12 square root of 3. We can combine these two, and that's it. Our final answer here is just a negative 16 plus 12 square root of 3. 5 minus 4 square root of 5 times negative 2 plus the square root of 5. So what I want to do is take all parts of my first parenthesis and multiply by all parts of my second parenthesis. So let's do that. 5 times a minus 2 is a minus 10. 5 times the square root of 5 is just 5 square root of 5. Minus 4 square root of 5 times the minus 2. Two negatives make a positive, so we have a positive. 2 times 4, or 4 times 2 is 8. Square root of 5 here. And then minus 4 times the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is just a minus 4 square root of 5 times 5. We can combine the square roots into 1. All right, one big square root, multiplication, and the 4 is just on the outside. So now we can simplify a little bit. We have a negative 10 is right there. But now we both have square roots of 5s right there, so we can combine these two, look at the numbers out front. 5 plus 8 is a 13, so we have 13 square root of 5 here. Okay, minus, well, we have a pair of 5s right there, so the pair brings the individual to the outside, okay? And that's 4 times that 5, and then the square root gets eliminated, okay? So we can simplify this a little more. We have a negative 10 here plus 13 square root of 5, and then 4 times 5 is 20. Okay, So we have minus 20 right there. We can combine that with a minus 10 to be minus 30. And so we have minus 30 plus 13 square root 5. And that is our final answer. Negative 2 minus 3 square root of 5 times 5 minus square root of 5. Okay? Well, all parts of my first parenthesis need to be multiplied by all parts of my second parenthesis. So let's do that. Minus 2 times 5 is a minus 10. Minus 2 times the square root of minus square root of 5 is a positive, right? Negative and negative is positive. 2 square root of 5. Minus 3 square root of 5 times 5 is a minus 15. 3 times 5 is 15, square root of 5. And then minus 3 square root of 5 times a minus square root of 5 is addition here. A negative, negative is positive. We have 3. And the square roots combined to be 5 times 5. So now let's simplify this. Well, the negative 10 just out here. All right, but now we can combine the 2 square root of 5 minus 15 square root of 5, because both are the same square root of 5. Look the numbers out in front. 2 minus 15 is a minus 13 square root of 5 here. Then, bring down here, well, we have a pair of square root of 5s right there, so we put an individual 5 on the outside, so it's 3 times 5, and the square root gets eliminated. Simplify that, basically just bring this down. All right, the minus 10 minus 13 square root of 5, but 3 times 5 is 15. 15 and minus 10 combine together to be a positive 5, so we have 5 minus 13 square root of 5 as our final answer. Square root of 5 minus the square root of 3 times square root of 5 plus the square root of 3. Okay? Well, what I want to do here is distribute all parts of my first parenthesis by all parts of my second parenthesis. Square root of 5 times square root of 5 is the square root of 5 times 5. Square root of 5 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 5 times 3. Minus square root of 3 times square root of 5 is a minus square root of 3 times 5. And then here again, minus square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is a minus square root of 3 times 3. Okay, this one's pretty tricky. All right, we'll circle our pairs. We have a pair of 5s right here, which means there's a 5 on the outside, no more square roots, so we just have a 5 right there. This one, there's no more pairs, so we can't really simplify that anymore, so we just have the square root of 15. Here, 3 times 5 is the square root of just 15 again, same idea. No pairs, have to do it like that. 3 times 3 is really a 9, square root of 9 is a 3, if you want to think of it like that. So square minus 3 on the outside here. Or we have circle pair, there's an individual 3 on the outside, square root gets eliminated. Well, in one fell swoop here, let's combine our terms that we can. 5 and minus 3 come out to be a positive 2. And then we have square root of 15 minus square root of 15. Well, they eliminate each other, and that's it. So our final answer here really is just 2. 5 times the square root of 2x plus the square root of 5 times minus 4 square root of 2x plus the square root of 5x. Okay? Well, what I want to do here is, since I cannot simplify within each parenthesis here, I'm going to multiply all parts of my first parenthesis times all parts of my second parenthesis. So I draw my arcs to make sure I've done that step here. And 5 times square root of 2x times a minus 4 square root of 2x. Well, 5 times minus 4 is a minus 20. And then we combine this into one big square root here of 2 times 2 times x times x. That's an x right there. Okay. Now, we do that. That's 5 square root of 2x times square root of 5x. 5 is just on the outside. We square root here of, we'll put our numbers together, 2 times 5 times x times x. Okay. Now, next part here, square root of 5 times a minus 4 square root of 2x is a minus 4 square root into one big square root here of 5 times 2x. Okay. Then lastly here, square root of 5 times the square root of 5x combines to be one big square root, 5 times x. Okay. So now let's go simplify each one of these and see what we can do here. Well, we see a pair of 2's here and a pair of x's. Since I have that, I can come on the outside. We have minus 20 times 2 times an x, and then there's nothing left in the square root, so we're kind of done with that. Here, I don't see anything except for a pair of x's. So the pair of x's come to the outside, so we have 5x here. The square root of 2 times 5, which is left over on the inside, we just leave it like that, 2 times 5 for right now. Okay? Well, this next one here, a minus, well, there's no pairs going on, right? There's no pairs, 5, 2, and the x's, so I'm going to leave as 4 times the square root, and 5 times 2 is 10, so we have 10x there. Lastly here, we have a pair of 5s, okay, pair of 5s. So we put a single 5 on the outside, and we're left with a single x on the inside. So let's see if we can tidy this up a little bit and simplify here. Negative 20 times 2 is minus 40, right? 40x here, plus 5x, 2 times 5 is 10, times the square root of 10, minus 4 square root of 10x here, in the parentheses, and then plus 5 square root of x. Again, now I look and see if any of the square roots at least have the same thing we're taking the square root of, and that's a negative. So our final answer we have here, it's a long but true final answer, a minus 40x plus 5x square root of 10 minus 4 square root of 10x plus 5 square root of x. 3, or minus 3, sorry, square root of 3k plus 4 times square root of 3k minus 5. Okay? Well, so I cannot simplify within each of my parentheses, so I'm going to distribute everything from my first parenthesis times everything of my second parenthesis. So, let's do that. We draw our arcs to make sure we have all our steps there. Minus 3 times square root of 3k times square root of 3k. And just a minus 3 square root of 3 times k times k. I'm going to combine the two square roots into one big one and put our numbers and our letters together. Rearrange that. Same thing here. Minus 3 times square root of 3k times minus 5. Two negatives being multiplied to positives, so we have positive 3 times 5 is 15. And we just had the square root of 3k right there. Okay? Time for the 4. 4 times square root of 3k is just 4 on the outside, square root of 3k. And 4 times a minus 5 is a minus 20. Pretty easy right there. Okay? Well, so now we can circle our pairs. We have a pair of 3's here and a pair of k's. All those pairs represent singles on the outside square root, so we have minus 3 here, times that 3 times that k. And there's nothing left inside the square root, so the square root gets eliminated. Well, I'd also combine here, both of these are the square root of 3k. Right, so since we're both square root of 3k, I can combine those two together by looking at the numbers out front and adding that 15 plus a 4 is a 19. So we have 19 here, square root of 3k. And we just have the minus 20 on the outside. Well, minus 3 times 3 is a minus 9, so we have a minus 9k right here, plus 19 square root of 3k minus 20. And there we have it. We have our final answer here. Now you could rearrange it if you want, put the 20 out front or whatever. I'm fine with how it is right here. Our final answer being minus 9k plus 19 square root of 3k minus 20. 5 plus 4 square root of 3 times 3 plus the square root of 3. Okay? Well, what I want to do here is I'm going to multiply all parts of my first parenthesis times all parts of my second parenthesis. 5 times 3 was 15, or is 15. 5 times the square root of 3 is just 5 square root of 3. 4 square root of 3 times 3, well, 4 times 3 is a 12, so we have 12 square root of 3 here. And 4 square root of 3 times square root of 3 is just that, plus 4 square root of 3 times 3 right there inside the square root. We combine it into one big square root. So let's simplify here. Well, 15 just comes down 15 here. But 5 square root of 3 plus 12 square root of 3, they both are square root of 3. So we look to the numbers out front, the 5 and 12, and add them together to combine them. And 5 plus 12 is 17. So we have 17 square root of 3 here. Plus, well, we have a pair of 3's right there, right? That can be an individual 3 on the outside, so we have 4 times the 3 there. There's nothing left inside the square root. So that's it. We just have a 4 times 3. 4 times 3 is 12, so we have 15 plus 17 square root of 3 plus 12 here. And now I can combine the 15 and the 12 together to get us our 27 here, plus 17 square root of 3. And that's all we can combine, and that's it. Our final answer, 3 square root of 2 plus the square root of 5 times the square root of 2 minus 3 square root of 5r. Okay. Well, since I cannot simplify within each parenthesis, I'm going to take all parts of my first parenthesis and multiply it by all parts of my second parenthesis. So 3 times the square root of 2, square root of 2 times square root of 2 is just 3 square root of 2 times 2. I'm going to put that square root of 2 and square root of 2 into one big parenthesis. Next part here, 3 square root of 2 times minus 3 square root of 5r. Well, 3 times 3, or minus 3 is a minus 9, right? And then the square root into one big square root here is 2 times 5 times r. Next part, square root of 5 times square root of 2 is plus square root of 5 times a 2. And then lastly, square root of 5 times minus 3 square root of 5r. This is minus 3 square root of 5 times r. Okay? So now we need to simplify that. Okay? So pair of 2's right here. Pair of 2's represent an individual on the outside. So square root of 2 times 2 is just 2. So we have 3 times 2 right there. Minus 9 here. Well, 2, 5, and r, there are no pairs there. I can combine, so I'm going to multiply 2 times 5 back out, and we have square root of 10r right here. Well, this one here, 5 times 2, again, no pairs, no way to break it down, so we have square root of 10 multiplying 5 times 2. This last one here, I have a pair of 5's right there. So pair of 5's represent an individual on the outside, so we have 3 times 5 here times the square root of just the r. So let's just tidy this up here. 3 times 2 is a 6, minus 9 square root of 10r, okay, plus square root of 10, and minus 3 times 5 is 15, 15 square root of r. Since there's no square roots that are the same here, I cannot combine anything, no numbers that I can combine. So my final answer here is written as 6 minus 9 square root of 10r plus square root of 10 minus 15 square root of r.
Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math. Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math. MinuteMathTutor.com.